Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rich Simple Human. We're diving straight in, much to Katie's surprise, and we're here today together, which is absolutely amazing, to talk to you about all things related to personal agency and choice. This is a big episode because Katie and I have known each other for quite a while, and something that I find most mysterious, Katie, is people's own health journeys and how difficult sometimes it seems to be to take control. And the reason that I've asked Katie to come on the show today is because you've had your own health challenges, you have a very robust way of dealing with them, and you don't take any nonsense from yourself. So welcome to the show. You're also a health coach. Would you like to start by telling our audience a little bit about what you do, and then we'll dive into your own personal story?
So I am a health and fitness coach for people who have been diagnosed with a fairly life-altering chronic condition. And for some that might be diabetes, it might be post-stroke, it might be a cardiac problem. But I work with people at the initial stage of diagnosis to kind of take over the mental, physical, nutrition side of things. I started as a nutritional therapist, yoga teacher, got a degree in sport rehabilitation, became a life coach, and I kind of integrate all the different aspects into someone's full health journey.
So if that doesn't sound like a very helpful person to have in your life, I don't know what does. And what's interesting, Katie, is when we talk about the kind of people that are drawn to you, often it's because of your own story, which you're really open about sharing. Yeah. So you're attracting a tribe of people that need the journey that you've already walked.
Yeah, I think that's where I tend to come from. And I think it always surprises clients when they come to me and they'll sort of say, well, you probably won't understand because of your age, we like to put people in boxes. And I think it often surprises people that I have probably been through most health things at this point and therefore have researched, understood, used myself as a guinea pig, sometimes with success and sometimes without, to then be able to help clients go from where they are to moving forward, because I can say I've been there, I've done it, and I walk the walk. Yeah.
So staying healthy, we both have a really, really rigorous methodology and also passion and desire for holding people accountable. And the reason that Katie and I connect in the way that we work is because I like to say it's almost like you've nailed somebody's feet to the floor. There really is nowhere to hide. If they've said, I want this, can you help me? We say yes, and this is what we're going to do. And then they tend to make every excuse under the sun.
Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate with the clients I've had in that, yes, there will always be excuses, but I think you and I are both quite similar in that we are human beings. We're not encouraging robotic behaviour. We both allow nuance within the journey. People are going to fall off. I fall off. You probably fall off. Best will in the world. No one can maintain true discipline 10 out of 10 all the time. And you wouldn't really want them to, because it's not sustainable forever. So I think you and I are both quite similar in that we try to strip things back to the absolute core fundamentals and then build on that to make sure that someone doesn't come in and feel overwhelmed with the amount of change they've got to make. It's actually often, I think, surprising for people how little they need to change. It's the consistency that they maintain that change that actually is going to have the most impact.
Absolutely. And if you happen to be a business owner, a leader, an entrepreneur, or a coach, or somebody with a health challenge, it's the consistency that matters here. It's doing the little things every day and holding yourself accountable that really makes the difference. And it's a bit like people going away on retreats or crash dieting or going and having whatever treatment they're going to have. You need to find something that you do every day that really builds the difference. Habit stacking and all the other tools and techniques that we use. So, Katie, without further ado, could you explain the condition that you live with, that you manage, and also a little bit about how you share that journey online? Because if you're not watching Katie, it's worth watching because her gym antics are worth seeing. And when it goes well, it's great. When it goes wrong, it's a disaster. Because, Katie, tell us a little bit about the condition that you manage.
So I was born with a genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. It is a connective tissue disorder. There are 13 different subtypes. I've been diagnosed with the hypermobile subtype, but that is currently being restudied to see if I've actually got one of the other types as well as. Ehlers-Danlos, because it is connective tissue, it affects, yes, hypermobility in that, all of your joints are lax, but there's a difference between internal kind of laxity as well as the way that it presents externally. So a lot of people with Ehlers-Danlos they might present with easy bruising They might present with frequent dislocations and subluxations. They might present with vascular issues, really thin, weak capillaries that might regularly burst, which is definitely my experience. I get them in my fingers, my eye sometimes goes, and my gums. Internally, it affects us in a way that's really hard to explain because there are so many things that tend to be associated with it. So 85% of people with Ehlers-Danlos are also neurodivergent or on the spectrum somewhere. Because your body is just living in a constant state of fight or flight. And I'll kind of, I guess, explain a bit more when I talk about my own lived experience. But yeah, so it most frequent kind of things that are attributed to it are things like MCAS, which is basically where your mast cells, mast cell activation syndrome. So it's basically where your own body doesn't quite understand what an allergy is. You know, it creates and produces too many mast cells, which can cause internal allergies to almost everything at times. It can also present with POTS, which is definitely something that I live with, which is post-orthostatic syndrome tension, where a simple shower for me in the morning can be enough to ruin my entire day. Like, I physically cannot have a shower in the morning. It has to be done at night because my blood pressure drops too low and my heart rate goes too high. I also have supraventricular tachycardia. So a shower and a POTS episode could then lead to an SVT attack, which would then mean that my heart rate goes out. I can then have an AFib or two during the day, so it comes with so many different sub-conditions within the diagnosis itself. The logo for Ehlers-Danlos is a zebra, because when doctors are told to, when doctors hear hooves, they typically think horse. So they go for a more classical diagnosis. It took me 15 years of fighting to get a diagnosis, which is exhausting in and of itself. But yeah, so it's a zebra because you are unusual. You know, it is a rare condition. It is unusual, but it's also because no two zebras present with the same stripes. And no one with Ehlers-Danlos will present with exactly the same subcategories, issues, symptoms, and problems day to day. So yeah, it's a fascinating disease. It's one of the least researched apparently in the world, and that's something that I campaign with, is just trying to raise awareness so that other people that might not be diagnosed and have a load of symptoms they just don't understand might actually see a post and go, that sounds like me, which is what I did.
And tell me, how many people have been diagnosed in the UK or globally, and is that increasing as it becomes more aware, or is it a sort of static number?
I think it's difficult to quantify, certainly with the hypermobile type, which is the one that I have. It used to be, I think it was 1 in 50,000. It's now 1 in 5,000.
Okay.
So there are a lot more people that present with it than used to. But there's also a lot of people who might have hypermobile spectrum disorder, HSD, but not have the Ehlers-Danlos variation. So HSD might present with, excuse it if you're, particularly lax joints.
For comparison, by the way, that's my arm. I'm not hypermobile at all.
Yeah, but it's different for different people. Having Ehlers-Danlos is a very complex condition, so it's hard to tell whether people are being diagnosed with EDS who may have HSD instead.
Yes.
Or actually whether it is just that more people are being understood finally and being able to get help. A lot of doctors don't like diagnosing it, and their argument is, what's the point? Because there's nothing you can do about it, which was what I kept coming up against. Why do you want the diagnosis? What's the point? There's no treatment, there's no cure, it's degenerative, we can't do anything about it. You also don't qualify for disability allowance. So, you're sick, but you're not quite sick enough to qualify to actually get sort of government support. Yeah. So there's quite a lot of resistance to getting a diagnosis. So,
and is there's a genetic test that accompanies this? So if anybody is listening and thinking, actually, this is beginning to sound like something I'd like to know more about.
So for the 12 subtypes, there is a genetic test. For hypermobile type, as yet, there is not a genetic test available. The one thing that seems to be, and has been in the last, I think it was 18 months, has been repeatedly shown to be found, is you are unable to methylate vitamin B. So if a doctor says, I can't test you, there's no genetic testing, and they push back on the diagnosis, you could ask for a vitamin B methylation test, because if you fail that, that is something that everyone with hypermobile type has.
Okay, this is really interesting information. And in terms of websites, Katie, if anybody's got this immediate urge now to go and do some research, where should they go and start looking into this a little bit more?
Ehlers-Danlos.com or Ehlers-Danlos-Syndrome.co.uk are great resources. They have local meetups. The Facebook groups are quite active.
Amazing. So this is a very complicated condition, which is degenerative and requires daily work. The bit that I'm most interested in is how Katie manages that daily work, normally to great effect. And she has a number of tips and tricks, tools and techniques that she uses. You explain the morning routine, being aware of what's going on in your body. Can you start from there, telling people how you make sure you build that awareness and how you get a dashboard really on what's happening?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about the different ways that it's affected me in general, or do you want me to just talk about how I cope with it?
I think if you can talk about a sort of day to day, these are the things I'm thinking about. Because what I see in my clients is they're not thinking about what's actually going on. They might be in ChatGPT looking for a solution without actually realising that maybe their blood pressure is low, or their glucose levels are low, or they're actually sleep deprived, or they're feeling very dizzy. They're not aware of actually what's going on in the body. So I'd love you to start from that place and move on from there.
Yeah, sure. So for me, one of my clients who actually he has Ehlers-Danlos, he was recently diagnosed, and he was saying, can you imagine being put in your body without an instruction manual? And I didn't quite understand what he meant, but he was saying, if an able-bodied person woke up in my body in the morning, they would actually have no idea with how to live with it. And I think that was the first time it really hit me of, I look able-bodied. A lot of the time I'm fortunate enough to live like an able-bodied person, but actually if you were to wake up in my body tomorrow morning, you'd be like, what on earth am I doing with this? So I wake up in the morning with a subluxed shoulder, collarbone, both knees and left ankle. That's my base normal every single morning. So the first thing I do when I wake up is kind of take a mental full body scan. I really think about paying attention to my feet, my ankles, my knees, my hips, what's moved, what's not moved, what is still attached, what is not still attached. And then I'm quite fortunate with my experience, with the amount of muscle I've built, that I can actually just contract everything into position, and it's kind of...
So for anyone that doesn't know, subluxation is actually is dislocated.
Yeah, so my shoulder, for example, if I relax it, it just falls out of its socket. You can see the head there, it's just,
It's loose. Yeah. So it's out of place. You wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Those joints aren't contracted.
No.
And if you were to suddenly jump out of bed...
I would fall on my face. I have done. Yeah. So I put my joints back in. I wake up and then I sit on the edge of my bed because of my low blood pressure. First thing, obviously that's going to be lower than. So I sit and do some very gentle breath work to, again, just kind of start to bring myself aware, make myself actually come into my body, not look at my phone, not do anything that pulls me and my attention outside of my body. In yogi terms, they talk a lot about pratyahara, like the withdrawal of the senses. Whilst I don't do it with my eyes closed, I do take those first few minutes to really apply that part of yoga to my body and my breath. Then it's pint of water with my medication, and then I can't eat within 30 minutes minimum of taking my pills. I had a total thyroidectomy, so I'm on thyroid pills for life. So yeah, I then go for a walk with the dog. It's a really slow plod. I'm fortunate that Buddy Bear is quite old, so we do a walk, and then I have the same breakfast every single morning, and I have done for 9 years. I have a summer variation and a winter variation. Part of that is because it suits me. I know that it's balanced. I know that I quite look forward to it every day. The other reason is actually just to reduce mental fatigue in the morning. I don't have to think about anything else. I don't have to make decisions. My morning is so predictable that it kind of helps me manage the rest of the day, because if I can, not so much control, but predict within as much as anyone can, the way that I'm going to feel having eaten that, drunk this, taken those pills, it kind of allows me to gently bring myself into the day. If I'm having a low blood pressure day, I will add in a wall sit, because isometric exercises are brilliant at bringing up your blood pressure. So if it's a case of your blood pressure is just too low to be able to stand up or go for a walk, a wall sit can gently bring that up, or a plank. Yeah. And then for me, it's integrating small things. So it's calf raises every morning while the kettle's boiling. I've really tried to simplify my morning kind of rehab, if you like. So yeah, it's calf raises, and then it's banded scapular raises to just wake up my body before I'm going to use it for the rest of the day.
And for anybody who's now thinking, gosh, how terribly dull or irritating, just watch your mental chatter here. Because what Katie's talking about is essential for a healthy nervous system. A routine helps our body and our mind feel safe. And I'm not talking about having control needs or OCD.
No.
I'm talking about the basic scaffolding of your day. And I'll often say to my clients, choose 3 times a day to eat, spread it apart. You might want to say 7, 1 and 7. Stick to that. Equally distribute your calorific intake across those 3 windows and try and build your habits around that. And people roll their eyes. Oh, I haven't got time. Oh, it's so boring. Well, if you haven't got time to eat properly or sleep properly, you're going to find it very difficult to do anything else. And I also have this same problem and the same conversation in my head every day. I might not be hungry. Oh, I don't really feel like breakfast. Oh, I'm not really in the mood. Oh, look, there's a chocolate croissant. Let's eat that instead. And there has to be some level of agency and personal decision making and discipline here. Breakfast that is similar or the same every single day will set you up physically, mentally, and emotionally for optimum performance. Katie, what do you have for breakfast in the winter and what do you have for breakfast in the summer?
I have a sweet tooth. I'm not one of those health coaches that is going to tell you to cut out all the sugar. I just can't. I'm a human being and I love it. So my breakfast in the winter is I will get a bag of apples and I stew them up with a load of cinnamon and raspberries. And then every morning I pop that in the microwave, warm it up, and I have that with granola and a vanilla protein yogurt. And then I have 1 coffee a day. So I have my coffee and I put collagen and creatine into it. So that's my morning in the winter. And then in the summer that swaps for strawberries, peaches, nectarines. You know, I kind of source fruit from the market to make sure that I'm still getting the same amount of fibre in. It's just a cold variation of exactly the same. The granola is the same. The yogurt is the same. The flax seeds is the same. The pumpkin seeds are the same. Yeah. So everything else stays the same. The fruit just changes.
Well done. And of course, you will have read perhaps the Glucose Goddess or some of these other people that say savoury breakfast, but it is really down to personal choice.
I think that's the thing. You know, in lots of ways, a savoury breakfast does help a lot of people. You know, it helps you manage sugar spikes and everything else. And depending on the client I'm working with, I might encourage different choices to the one that I make. Again, it's actually a nervous system thing for me. So having the hot apple, I actually have it most of the year except for, you know, the very hot months. It's like eating homemade apple pie, and it's a real grounding, comforting, familiar, you know, it's kind of like eating something that reminds you of your grandma's house. It's that sense of, okay, you know, I don't know, it just really makes me feel quite grounded first thing, having this warm, earthy breakfast that's got everything I know I need in it, and then being able to go about my day feeling quite, grounded.
It's very interesting as well, if anybody is interested in Ayurvedic principles,
Yes.
which of course have been around for centuries. I've noticed as I've got older, the real need for hot food. And it's quite extreme, actually. Some days I can't quite work out
Kapha pitta.
what I'm feeling. And I might have teas or I might have hot drinks, but I actually need hot food, and it's something to do with your body type. But certainly if you can do that in the morning, it's a great way to start the day, and like you say, ground the nervous system and really encourage that sense of security and safety. Katie mentioned protein in her breakfast. I think 9 out of 10 people I speak to are not consuming enough protein. Recommendations are 1 gram per kilo of body weight at least.
Oh, minimum. I do 1 gram per pound of body mass, so it's about 2 grams per kilo. Most clients I work with are getting maybe a quarter of that, if that, on a good day.
And this is where ChatGPT is your friend, or Claude, or whichever your preferred platform is. If you type in quickly what you ate yesterday and ask it to estimate the amount of protein you ate, I think you're going to be very surprised. I also think we need to remind people about fibre, Katie, because, gosh, eggs and spinach doesn't really cut the mustard. And when I thought I could live on that for a while, I realised that it was the lack of fibre that was causing me a problem, especially in the night in terms of sleep. Katie, tell me what your thoughts are on eating enough fibre.
So most people are probably aware of the rates of bowel cancer shooting up. Sadly, less so in grandparents' generations. And I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, but certainly in the younger generations. And I think a lot of that is due to diet of fibre. So current recommendations are 25 grams minimum for women, 35 grams minimum for males or those who identify as such. But it's so important as an intestinal liner, which means it protects you from sugar spikes. You know, by lining the intestinal tract first thing in the morning, you actually slow the body's ability to sugar. Therefore, you're slowing down the rate of this throughout the day, because there's sugars in everything, good and bad. And your body can't really differentiate too much between the sugar in terms of the way it impacts your glucose and insulin spikes. Most of us are fortunate, unless you're living with diabetes, you don't need to wear a wearable and concern yourself too much, but it is good to have an awareness. But yeah, increasing your fiber just helps your bowel move itself and eliminate properly, rather than having half a bowel movement and not actually completing it. It slows down sugar, aids nutrient absorption. It's so important that we take care of our gut. If anyone is remotely interested, there's a book called Gut, written by a doctor, and it's brilliant. It's educational, it's research backed, but it's so funny. She's done it in a really light-hearted approach, which makes it very, excuse the pun, digestible to read and learn from. So yeah, as a base start point to understand the impact your gut has on you in terms of it being your second brain, it's crucial.
Yeah. It's absolutely essential. And Katie and I have got another interview planned where we're actually going to talk about the basics. We're going to talk about the noise that people are experiencing, this information overload. And we're going to talk about the importance of having a coach that you can trust. We're also going to touch on Ozempic. We're not going to do that today. And we're going to talk about why it's so important you find somebody to support you, especially now, because ChatGPT is your friend, but it can't tell when you've got your hand in the biscuit tin at 11 o'clock at night, or, God forbid, have opened a third bottle of wine, because you can tell terrible fibs to ChatGPT and it will tell you whatever you want. Katie, let's come back to you, because you are very, very proactive at managing your personal circumstances in a way that I don't see anybody else having that much grit, determination, and self-control.
That's very kind.
It's absolutely true. And many people that we know in common will agree with me, of course. Tell me, how do you continue to maintain that level of strength?
Hope.
Great.
Honestly, hope. I was talking to a client this week who has Ehlers-Danlos, and she was saying that she gets an injury and she pushes because she's so frustrated with the body that she's in, that she's like, no, you're not injured. We're going to push. And I was saying to her, you have to take a breath. And I'm not saying that you need to sit down. I am saying you need to respect where you're at. And one of my mantras that I absolutely stick to is do less today so I can do the same or more tomorrow. So as an example, obviously you know about my background, but just to share a bit, I've dislocated both ankles, my midfoot, both knees, my left hip, my SI joint is a regular, if not daily thing, both elbows, right wrist, both shoulders. I live with slipping rib syndrome, so a simple cough can actually cause my ribs to dislocate and pinch nerves. I have had 2 collapsed lungs as a result of drinking fizzy drinks.
Wow.
Because my diaphragm spasmed and gave up. I've had my gallbladder removed, my thyroid removed, my appendix removed, my tonsils removed, 10 teeth removed. I've had rhabdomyosis in my left arm, so I killed all the muscle in my arm. And I've had 1 suspected TIA, transischemic attack, mini stroke, heart surgery as a consequence. Yeah. Oh, and 4 rounds of pneumonia. So when it comes to health, definitely been there. Got that.
For those of you that aren't following Katie on Instagram, she turned up last week in her climbing gear. She's regularly found on the slopes in the French Alps and doing all sorts of other crazy activities, because today she goes slower and looks after her body for tomorrow. Katie, I'm going to bring you back to that conversation you just alluded to with a client about positive self-talk and compassion and being in right relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Again, something I see very little of. What does that mental chatter look like between you, your mind, your body and your spirit?
For me personally, it used to be really tough. I lived with depression and anxiety when I first got diagnosed. It felt like I'd been given a death sentence and no one cared, because there is no consultant for EDS. There is, I think, 2 in St Thomas's Hospital in London. That's your luck. You have to become your own project manager, which feels so confusing when you know nothing about this disease. There's very little research out there. And when you go on the forums, sadly, they are full of people who got diagnosed, are in incredible pain, with no one to help them put the pieces of their puzzle together. So they do. They sit down, and it's not a case of giving up. They just run out. They just run out. And I'm incredibly fortunate that I love reading academic papers. And that has allowed me to study everything that I've experienced and understand it and be able to go, oh, well, that's caused that. That was linked to this. This would never have happened had I not been diagnosed with that. I can kind of pull my spider web together. For me, it was never a case of trying to get over depression or anxiety or fear. It was a case of befriending it. And that is the biggest thing for me with mental health. It's trying to say, I'm going to get rid of anxiety. I'm going to get rid of depression. I genuinely think all these things actually exist to help us heal and get better. And much like we say, if you don't schedule rest, your body schedules it for you and it's at a time that's most inconvenient. I think our brains do the same. If you don't pay attention to what your body is trying to tell you, your brain will make it so that you have to sit down and face it. And at the time, that can feel incredibly lonely and incredibly overwhelming. But for me, learning to befriend it and be like, depression, you are here. All right, take a seat. What am I not dealing with? What have I not looked at? What have I pushed down because I'm so busy trying to live? And I think Ehlers-Danlos, the only way I can liken it is to a whack-a-mole game. Even when the board is quiet and there's no moles coming up, you're standing there with your hammer and you're waiting because this disease doesn't go away. Today it might be a stroke. Tomorrow it might be a dislocation. You might get 6 months where you're like, I've cracked this, done. And then in my case, I was having a great summer last year and I picked up a kettlebell and I was like, I've never done a kettlebell swing, not in a very long time. I'm really stable. My blood pressure feels okay. I've just done a really big deadlift lift. So I stupidly left my hooks on because my arthritis is playing up. So I've lost a lot of the dexterity in my hands. So I used metal lifting hooks, had used them for my deadlifts, stupidly forgot to take them off, picked up my kettlebell, swung it up. As it went down, I'm not able-bodied. I have POTS. And my blood pressure went, nope. And I went down with it. I basically fainted and smashed my face into the floor, got it on video, and broke my nose, my eye socket, my collarbone, a rib, and my finger, and dislocated my shoulder. And
And there we have it.
And that's the whack-a-mole. That is
You
the
start
whack-a-mole
again.
game. Yeah.
I think life has a tendency to be a bit of a whack-a-mole. I always liken it to being a bit of a wave. We're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. Sometimes the sea's stormy, sometimes it's nice and wavy, sometimes it's perfectly flat. But resilience is about learning to be able to choose the right boat, get the right equipment that you need for the day, make sure you're wearing the right clothes, and off you go. And Katie, you describe really well a mindset for dealing with life that I think all of us could learn something from. My encouragement to anybody listening, if you are suffering from a chronic condition, a health challenge, or you're simply aging, a lot of this is manageable with the right physical, mental and emotional attitude. But I know that it doesn't feel that all the time.
No, it doesn't.
And like you say, depression and anxiety is something we've both experienced. I don't think you can ever say you've eliminated them.
No, I will never get rid of it.
But you can be aware of when it's coming and you can decide to have a plan. I've noticed in myself that many people around me, too many people, creates a level of disquiet in my mind and body that I can't tolerate in the way I used to. So I'm very careful with who I might spend time with, when I might want to go out to a big event, when I might need to stay at home. And I take action accordingly. And I think most people understand that when you say, do you know what? Right now, this just isn't right for me. Or can we just have dinner, the two of us, rather than the 10 of us? Or could we go for a walk rather than going for a climbing expedition? And I think most people, when you're brave and bold and you actually put yourself first, you're in right relationship with yourself. Your mental dialogue is kind. You've reparented your inner child. You've done all that work we do in sophrology. You can live a much better life. Katie, there's a million things we could talk about, but I'd love you just to add anything that we haven't talked about in today's conversation and any resources for people that might need it, and also how to contact you.
People say hope is a really dangerous thing, and I fully understand that. I always come back to that Shawshank film when Red says, hope's a really dangerous thing. It'll kill you because you're stuck inside. And I absolutely understand that. When you live with a chronic condition, having hope that it's going to go away might be a fool's game. Because it's not. And there is an element of allowing yourself to grieve the fact that actually this reality, in some form or another, is your reality for the rest of your life.
Of course.
But hope is what allows me every time I get injured to get back up and be like, this is not the day this becomes permanent. Because one day it will. One day I am likely to lose the use of my legs or stop being able to swallow, or my collapsed lung won't randomly reinflate itself. But I cling to hope that that day is not today. And so long as I am showing up and giving 1% when I want to give 0, that 1% might be tidying my room or going to bed earlier, or keeping my word to myself and keeping my protein high, or going to the gym and doing something rather than nothing. It's keeping hope alive will be the difference between you giving up and you clinging to some kind of, my life might look different if I just show up differently. And I think that's really important. The other thing I will say is just don't overcomplicate it. Don't overcomplicate it. So many, I know we're going to talk about this, so many, in my opinion, so many coaches have created products that don't actually exist because there is no reality to it. It is a case of live like your grandparents, walk more, use the stairs, eat a better balanced diet. If it comes in a packet and you don't understand half the ingredients, just don't buy it. Drink more water, do some exercise, be kinder to yourself, spend less time on these bloody things. Comparison is the thief of joy. You know, you might look at my page and be like, oh, Katie's got it all figured out. I still have bad days. They just don't make it to the Instagram reel. You know, it's, yeah, just pratyahara. Just draw your senses back in and concentrate, not in a selfish way, but in a way that allows you to sit with your own nervous system quietly.
I can't agree more. And it's interesting that Katie's raised the word hope, because there are 3 what we call wishes that were designed as part of the sophrology method back in the 90s when it was being built by Caicedo. And they are confidence, harmony, and hope. And we wish every client to experience those things: confidence, harmony, and hope. And when we move into feeling what those emotions are actually like, life becomes much more colourful, actually. Yeah. But of course, we get carried away and we do end up feeling like it's fear, control, and anxiety. And if you haven't done the basics, let me just remind you: sleep, eat, move, breathe. I think if you can get those 4 nailed today, you're winning at life. And if you can be in community with some other people as well as having done those 4 basics, you're laughing. Katie, owner of Puzzle Coaching, available for calls. Katie's very generous with all of her material and she is always open to a conversation. Yeah. Best platform to find you through?
Honestly, Instagram, Katie's Healthy Space. LinkedIn, I'm just Katie Brown. You can find me, or puzzlehealthcoaching.com is my website. But Instagram is really your best bet. It's Katie's Healthy Space.
And you'll find all of Katie's links down below in the show notes to this episode. You'll also find her on my LinkedIn platform, and you'll find us hanging out in various other adventurous spaces because we both have a little bit of a taste for the outdoor life. So until next time, Katie Brown, thank you so much for being here.